مرحبا بكم في جلستنا حول البحث عن الوثائق المفتوحة المصدر في العالم العربي.
Hello and welcome to our session on open source documents in the Arab world, and we will be talking about all the tools that help journalists for this purpose. And in order to deepen or go further into details, we are happy to welcome Lara Damas, who helps companies and enterprises, and who is from the OCCRP team. Before we start, I would like to remind all the participants over Zoom that they can send their questions in the chat box. And at the end, we'll have the Q's and A's session. Lara, the floor is yours.
Cool. I just want to check that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Today I'll be talking about the ways that we kind of do our research and reporting. And I think because it's kind of a short session, what will be most valuable, is this sound okay?
Yeah. Good.
Is if I kind of share some resources, but also talk through kind of how we think about these things, when we're trying to develop and verify our stories using open sources. So I'll kind of talk a bit about the broad kind of categories of different sources, so open sources, paid databases, why they're useful, kind of free tools and data sets that I find myself using, and that kind of thing. So just before we kind of start, I just wanted to give a bit of context of the type of work that we at OCCRP do that kind of explains the way I'm framing this whole talk and kind of where I'm coming from. So the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project consists of a network of investigative reporters, researchers, editors, data experts. We also work with member centers all across the world, and obviously we kind of specialize our reporting in, obviously it's in the name, uncovering organized crime and corruption, but so it's basically what we call follow the money kind of reporting. So that kind of means we do a lot of asset tracking, we try to uncover hidden wealth, so that kind of thing. And this kind of sets the tone for the type of open sources and methods I'm going to be talking about. And of course, there's other stuff that I'm not going to be able to cover because it's a short session. So, other types of open sources like satellite imagery and flight tracking and vessel tracking and that kind of thing. But we obviously don't have time to go over everything. OCCRP has a Middle East and North Africa team. It consists of MENA editors and also a MENA researcher. And these are kind of some of the stories you'll see on screen that we as the MENA team have worked on within the scope of this kind of follow the money investigative reporting. So, some of you might be familiar with the Riyad Salama series of investigations. So we looked at his offshore wealth and also some kind of conflict of interest when he was head of the central bank. We've also done stories on kind of tobacco tycoons in Iraq. We've looked at the way that Syrian phosphate is being shipped into Europe. We've done stuff on the IRGC, so the Islamic Revolutionary Guard in Iran, and their corporate interests in Syria. So those are the kind of stories we do. I just wanted to mention here quickly that many of these stories that we've done as the MENA team at OCCRP were done in collaboration with a lot of reporters here today, a lot of representatives from the centers that we work with, like ARIJ and Siraj, and also independent reporters that we work with. So little shout out to you who are here. I'm going to be talking about using open sources to get company records, a bit about the value of social media networks in conducting research and verifying information, so that kind of thing. So the first thing I wanted to go over were the different types of public records. What we as reporters who are investigating things in the region, what we should be thinking about when we're embarking on a story or an investigation. So what kind of sources we can draw upon and what we can turn to when we're in that process. So obviously the first thing on the screen is company registries. So when I say company registries, each country should really have a public registry that files or stores information on companies, and where you as like an ordinary citizen of the public should be able to go in, because obviously we believe in corporate transparency. Like, you should be able to go and find out information on the company, whether it's who owns the company, shareholding information, the ultimate beneficial owner, or information on its capital upon registration, or whether the company is even still active, or whether it was dissolved, liquidated, any debts, and so on. So obviously in the Middle East, we're going to talk about that in a bit, but that's not always a resource that we can turn to. So when that is the case, we'll go over in the next few slides, what can we do in that case? There are local registries, in some countries in the region, but often it's just really basic information, and it's rarely ownership information. So yeah, we'll go over what we can do to kind of overcome that, or workarounds. So the second thing on these public records that I've put together are leaks. So a lot of leaks that we know about and we've heard of, like the Panama Papers, Paradise, Pandora, the ICIJ leaks, a lot of that information is now public. And I think we've heard in other talks, there's the offshore leaks database that ICIJ hosts, where you can go in and basically search for, a person or a company, and see what's associated with it. You can see addresses or people or whatever it is. So that's a really valuable resource as well. Obviously, there's also Aleph, which is an OCCRP database. It's really incredible. I'm going to talk a bit about it in the next few slides. And obviously, I'm not going to go over all of these in the list, but there's also gazettes. Gazettes also should be public information, and basically they're either in a newspaper or online. And you should be able to see changes made to companies. So if a director has resigned or whatever it is, you should be able to see that. And actually, for us reporting on the region, sometimes gazettes are the most valuable resource. So in Syria, for example, it's pretty good, and it's difficult to search, but there are scrapes of it. That's kind of what we rely on mostly when we're looking at companies. Iran as well, actually, they've got a really good searchable gazette, which we often rely on. So another thing I wanted to say was that when I'm talking about, we're looking at companies and we're talking about public registries, what we're also talking about is looking at identifiers within this data. So if you have someone who's registered a company, obviously it depends on the place that the company is registered in, but you might be able to get their date of birth, or you might be able to get a phone number or an email address, or even an associated passport number. So this is kind of all things you need to be thinking about when you're investigating people or companies, or you're looking, through open sources. It's not just, you just never know what you're going to find, essentially. So I'm also going to talk a bit later about court records. Other things are obviously like land ownership registries, so property ownership, tax records, voters lists, phone books, import-export data, and that kind of thing. Again, though, it's not necessary, you look at these and you're like, well, this isn't something I can get in my country, because they don't make that kind of information available. But there are other methods and kind of workarounds and resources that we can at least try, that we should be thinking about, that we're going to talk about. So if we move on to the next slide. Okay, so I've kind of put together this pretty scrappy list of examples of some of the registries that are available in the Middle East and North Africa region. As you can see here, it's often really, really basic information. You're not going to be getting annual reports or financial records or that kind of thing, but there is some basic information you can get. For example, Bahrain, it does have a company registry and it does give shareholding information, but in other Gulf countries like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, it's not as easy to get that information, and we can talk about that in a bit. So Iraq also has a really good registry that actually recently, very recently, opened up its shareholding information. So you can go in, you can search for a company, and you can see who owns it, which we had never had before. So that's a really good development. It even, as I said about identifiers, it actually even gives you the person's, in some cases it will give you the person's mother's name, which again, when we're collecting different pieces of information, that's something that's pretty useful if you're mapping out relatives or associates or whatever it is. There's also in Iraq the stock exchange for publicly listed companies. Jordan has a basic registry. The UAE is a whole world in itself, which we can briefly talk about in a bit. Obviously Lebanon, Syria, and that kind of thing. And then yeah, in some cases you'll have to be getting creative, or you'll have to be paying a lawyer, or you'll have to be kind of developing a source in a free zone. And that's kind of when it's more, you need to have that kind of skill set. But that's the case really in the UAE and even Syria sometimes. We had that when we were looking at a company in the Damascus Free Zone, we had to get a source and pay a lawyer to help us. So I think that's pretty much it for that slide. Yeah, so this is a really basic example I always use for this to kind of demonstrate my point is with court records. So if we're talking about the UAE, for example, when it comes to its company registry, it's really, really difficult to get, like you're not going to get information. Like you can get, it depends on what, with which like local authority the company's registered, but if it's with like the ADGM, which is the Abu Dhabi Global Market, you'll get shareholding information, but that's pretty much the only one. Like if it's in any other free zone, like Ras Al Khaimah or whatever it is, you won't even get like a, you'll literally get nothing, basically, just the company name and proof that it's possibly active. You can get like its national license. So, that is the case. However, what we've kind of learned through our work and trying to like just dig, this is all online, right? So this is something we figured out just trying to like find new sources and trying to find information, is that there's actually a pretty searchable registry for like Dubai courts. So any case that took place in Dubai, you can kind of go in and it's like, as you can see, there's a search bar. You can search by name, you can search by company, you can search by key terms. So that's really useful for us if, because if you have a company name, and if you have a company that's been implicated in a court case in Dubai, that means that the court case is likely to list who its owners are, and often, actually, I think it does. And also, if you're looking at a person and you want more information, you can go in there and search, and it might list their kind of the companies they're associated with. So I think not yet. So again, yeah, it's just about like thinking about these different things, like thinking about ways we can kind of work around. And obviously, this kind of applies, which is the next slide I want to show. The kind of next point I want to make is that it's obvious this would apply to different jurisdictions as well. So for example, if you're looking at a person in Saudi Arabia or in the United Arab Emirates and you know that there's limited information you're going to be getting from open sources there, you might be able to go to, using tools or whatever it is, you might be able to go to other jurisdictions where it's more transparent. In this case, not that the Cayman Islands is transparent, but when we were looking at the Saudi Arabian guy, we actually ended up finding a court case he was implicated in the Cayman Islands. And in that court case, it had listed not only like that, it had confirmed his association with the company we were looking at, but it had listed a bunch of other companies associated with him that were also involved in this financial scheme. And that's not something we would have got from the UAE. So it's just really important to, this is my next point, is it's really important to be familiar with what you can get in other jurisdictions too. So not just like, in your country or regionally, but also, think like globally, right? So, this obviously applies to company records as well, so knowing how to navigate company registries. Obviously, it's important for us because, if you're looking at a businessman in your country or like a scheme in your country, as we saw with the Riyadh Salama case, for example, it's unlikely that the trail is going to end in your country. It's likely, people move their money abroad and have assets all over the world, so it's really important to know like how you can kind of navigate those kind of registries, not just, elsewhere basically, so you're not just stunted by your kind of local, knowledge. And this brings me to a resource that I really wanted to share with you guys because it's super useful and I literally use it like every day, multiple times throughout the day, and I would really recommend you all use it and bookmark it if you're feeling like it. Essentially, it's a free database that you can literally go now on Google and find it. It's the id.occrp.org. So OCCRP ID has this, we've basically compiled over 1,000 sources, so publicly available links from over 180 countries. And essentially you can kind of, what we've done is we've put together links of like public sources that you can kind of go to and a small description of how to use it. So for example, if you're looking at, if you've never experienced a Luxembourg registry, but a document you've obtained shows some kind of Luxembourg connection, you can literally just go in, search Luxembourg, and it will tell you like how to, it will give you the link to the Luxembourg registry, and it will give you the link to the Swiss Gazette, and it tells you like how to get to the Jordanian registry and so on. So it's a really good resource. I would recommend everyone uses it. So let's go to the next slide. Yeah, this is just a demonstration of why it's important to familiarize yourself with what's available in other countries. As I said, when we were looking at Riyad Salameh, you know, it didn't stop in Lebanon, obviously. He had companies in Liechtenstein and Panama, you know, he had properties in London and Switzerland, France, everywhere. So if we didn't know how to, you know, if we didn't know that you could actually get that information, if we didn't know that you could get a property record in the UK very easily just online, then we might not have seen that, okay, you know, which clearly stated that his company owned the property, we might not have gotten that information. Okay, so this kind of takes me to my next point about Aleph. So this is OCCRP Aleph. I did want to dedicate like a bit of time to talking about Aleph because it's just an incredible tool and I think every journalist should be using it. And if you haven't got an account already, you can apply for one through aleph.occrp.org. And all you have to do is just say you're a journalist and explain who you work for. So essentially, Aleph is a search tool. It's like a database. It just has like, I don't want to say trillions, but it has like millions and millions of data points, tons and tons of documents, data sets. It's just a huge amount of data that basically the OCCRP team has been compiling for years. And it just ranges from, if we, move on. So, you know, it has data on company, it has company registries, it has Gazette information, it has court archives, leaks, financial records. It just has a ton of information. And basically, it's just incredible, and I would highly recommend everyone use it. So it just makes it easier for us, essentially, because it's scraped and compiled all of this data in one place. It makes it easier for us to search for things. So, you know, for example, if we're looking at company registries, you know, in your country, you might only be able to search a company registry by like a company name or a company number. But because Aleph would have potentially scraped that data, it means you can search by a person and you're going to get a result to do with the company, if that makes sense. Okay, so this is basically just what it looks like when you search for something. Here I've just done a demo of searching for Rami Makhlouf. You'll see on the left you'll get, I can't really give a full demonstration on Aleph because it's so massive and extensive, but if anyone's interested, we can talk after. But essentially, like, you'll get a result, you'll get, you know, the list of data sets that the name is coming up in. So it also shows you, it gives you kind of a timeline of the dates of the documents and in what capacity is coming up, which is obviously really helpful because, you know, you can see there, for example, I think there's like a spike in 2011, which would be probably the documents uploaded to Aleph to do with like sanctions listings from 2011. So that maybe wouldn't be as useful, but if you're maybe interested in looking at like the pre-sanctions era, you can just filter by all documents from before 2009 or whatever. You can also filter by country, which is really interesting because if you see that, I don't know, you're getting a result in Iran when you shouldn't really be getting a result in Iran, maybe there's some kind of connection there and you can just explore. So if we just move on. Yeah. So this brings me to my next point of like why databases like this are important and how like you can actually sometimes pull stories out just by kind of, you know, spending some time exploring the data and what's in there. And there are actually some big like journalism projects that rely kind of solely on these kind of scraped and indexed just public data. So for example, one of the data sets I mentioned, there are several 100,000 data sets in Aleph. One of them that we are like continuously scraping is it's basically like ownership information on foreign companies that own property in the UK. So any foreign company that owns a property in the UK. So what you can do here is you can literally go in to Aleph and search a person of interest, like someone you're looking at or whatever it is. And you can basically see if any of their companies own property here. So I've just quickly put this example of, you know, Riyad Salameh. If you go in, you'll see that he is associated with this Luxembourg company called Fullwood. And if you then kind of do a search on Fullwood, you'll see that it's associated with a number of addresses in the UK. So this is something that came, like they released this registry much long after we had done our stories on him. But again, like it could have been as simple as like a 2-minute search. What's the time? 10 minutes? All right. So I'm not going to go into this in detail then, but these are kind of some search operators that are, you know, really important to us to be thinking about when we're doing our searches online, because obviously if you put Rami Makhlouf in Google, you're going to get like millions of results. But if you want to kind of narrow it down, like maybe you're looking at a different makhloof and not Rami. You'll want to do kind of you'll want to exclude the word Rami, So these are just different things. This is on the slide. You can just look at it later. I'm not going to go through it now. I just wanted to talk, a bit about social media before we run out of time. Okay, so obviously social media. I think, obviously, if there's one takeaway from this, I think it would be, never underestimate how much data people do put on social media. So what I mean by that is, like, when you're doing your research, like, it's really crucial to be as thorough and really just to spend time digging and digging, because you really just never know what you're going to find. I put this slide on the presentation just because it was kind of absurd. We were looking at this Libyan businessman. It was part of this like tobacco smuggling story, and we were just kind of exploring. We eventually found his Facebook page, and he had just posted like literally a bunch of kind of documents just on his Facebook page, which wasn't even private. So he posted pictures of like trucks and ships that were exporting kind of, from Italy to Libya, which was really useful to us and a really crucial element of our story. For some reason, I don't know if it's this slide or the next one. Yeah, he'd even posted like screenshots of his company registered in Turkey in the Turkish Gazette, and he'd like posted screenshots of the Turkish Gazette for some reason. Obviously, there were even customs documents in there from Libya. There were companies we didn't even know he was associated with. He just put them on Facebook. So this is like, obviously, at this point it was kind of a gold mine for us, and we just sat and looked through the documents and saw, looked for things of relevance to us. And again, it was literally just online on his Facebook account. So obviously, in this case, we were able to find like new information on social media and new documents just going through someone's Facebook page, but also social media can be really helpful to us in like verifying information we already think we know, but maybe need something a bit stronger. So just quickly, I'll give this quick example of, we recently did an investigation into people who bought Dominican passports from across the world. And this is kind of what the data looked like. As you can see, there's actually no identifying information in there other than the person's name. So there was no address, no data on their original nationality, no date of birth information. They were just grouped. The key thing was they were grouped as relatives, or that's what we deducted from looking at it. So in this case, we suspected that this person was the former central bank governor of Iraq, but we actually nowhere had his full name. So if you've worked with Iraqi names, you know that they don't really use their full name anywhere. So in this case, like the only thing we could find to confirm that this was actually, as I said, they were grouped in as relatives. So we assumed that the two people on the bottom were his kids. So what we needed to find was someone calling him Abu Ghalib, in Arabic, like father of Ghalib, because we assumed that was his eldest son. And that's exactly what we found, but on social media. So we found people commenting on his Facebook page and whatever, calling him Abu Ghalib, Abu Ghalib. And that was eventually kind of enough for us to verify, okay, this is very likely to be who we think it is. And then we were able to publish, using other sources as well. Okay, so tools and databases, I'm gonna go 2 minutes, yeah, okay, I'm not gonna go into them then. But, when we talk about tools and databases, obviously depending on what type of tool it is, like if it's like Aleph, it will have scraped, registry information or whatever. It just makes whatever the database is that you're looking at, it just makes it easier to search, essentially. So, some of these that are free are like ICIJ's offshore leaks. We've spoken about it already. There's open corporates. There's also, it's not just company databases, it's also people searches. So you can search for emails. You might know Truecaller. I'm sure some of you have it on your phone. So you can search phone numbers and see who's associated with them. So those are kind of some of the, very briefly, but I'll actually refer you to, Bellingcat has this online investigations toolkit. I would highly recommend everyone just go and explore it. They've done it really well. Like they've categorized it by, photo verification, video verification, company searches, people, whatever it is. And this is really comprehensive, and everyone should go and explore and see what tools are available. They've even put like descriptions of what you can expect from the tools, so I think everyone should be aware of that. Okay. Time, okay. Okay, oh shit, wait, oh, sorry. So just quickly, when we talk about these databases and what? Good, yeah, okay. So as I said, we're not only talking about okay, you search a company and you get a name back, or you're searching for a phone number and you get a result. It's also verifying information and getting evidence to build your story. So what I mean by that, I just want to very quickly give this example. So in this case, we were looking at the Wagner Group in Sudan, and basically we had this phone number of a guy who we thought was working for the Russians in Sudan, but we didn't have much else. We'd been told by sources, but we kind of wanted to take it further and just get kind of additional confirmation. So literally it was as simple as running his phone number through Truecaller, which is again free. And as you can see on the screen, like it basically told us, I think the way Truecaller works is it takes how people have saved your number. So what people had saved his number as was whatever his name is, representative of the Russians, And in another case, someone had saved this other guy we were looking at his phone number as the Russian translator. So all of this was kind of like additional confirmation we needed to, tell us what we already thought we knew. I'm guessing I'm running out of time. These are very quickly just some of the paid tools. They can range from, as I said, company information. It can be flight tracking, trade data, import-export, people searches, and these obviously all vary in what they can offer, but I definitely don't have time to go over them. Do I have time for one final example? Yeah, okay. So the last thing I wanted to show, just when I talk about these paid tools and how useful they can actually be, is so in this case, I didn't want to give another example on company registries because we've spoken about them enough. But in this case, we were looking at a company again that was sanctioned by the US Treasury, and we were looking at it in relation to an Iranian money launderer. But this guy wasn't coming up in connection to the company anywhere. Like he wasn't coming up in company records, he wasn't coming up in the sanctions listings. This is like a third-party site, but his name just wasn't coming up. But we had been told by a source he definitely was associated with the company. And essentially like the only evidence we were able to find, which was still valuable evidence for us, was when we searched the company's website into domain tools, or it basically tells you about information on the registration of the website. Essentially what we were I'm just going to finish this. Essentially it gave us not only his name, which was confirmation for us that he was associated with the company, it also gave us like his phone number, his email address, an address for him, and that's obviously all valuable information that we can kind of take further, all through like domain tools, not through, company registries and that kind of thing, which is why it's important to think beyond, and just get creative with your thinking and stuff. So I've gone way over time. Sorry. Here, take this.
شكرا لارا على هذا العرض. يعني في أشياء كتير لازم نحكيها بس داهمنا الوقت.
I know there are many things that we could have discussed, but we're short of time. Before opening the floor for questions, there's a question from our virtual world. You have confirmed the importance of research in Arab websites. You have confirmed that search is very important, not only in Arab data or digital, but also in Western ones. Can you tell us in less than half a minute, how can we overcome the language barrier? For instance, I'm a journalist working on a case of a cross-border case. How can we overcome
That's a really good
this?
question. So the first thing I would say is, obviously, as I've already kind of spoken about, is emphasis on kind of familiarity with what sort of databases you can explore elsewhere. That's really important. But kind of with that, I think we would all probably say like Google Translate, right? Like you can get Google Translate on your browser, you can download it as an add-on and just like translate a page. Also you can, if you have a PDF document or any kind of document, you can upload it to Aleph or any OCR tool and use Google Translate. But there's actually kind of something you have to think about if you're doing that, which is that Google Translate sometimes, you have to think about, actually sometimes the translations aren't completely accurate. So there's one example I always give with this, which is if you translate, so if you're looking at someone called Ward, like the Arabic name Ward, if you're kind of an Arabic journalist and you kind of pop that name into Google Translate and you're kind of wanting to do searches in English, for example, what you're going to get is the translation for Ward, which is flower. So you're going to be searching, maybe you don't know English at all, and you're going to be searching flower, Flower Abdullah or whatever his name might be. So that's kind of something you have to be thinking about if you are translating. So am I done? All right, carry on? Okay. If you are translating, you have to be thinking about that kind of translation issues, and the same goes the other way. So if you have an Arabic document, an Arabic language document, and you put it into Google Translate, sometimes they're going to transliterate, wrong in that way too. The final point I'd say is that's the importance of kind of these journalism networks. So you can always reach out to OCCRP, who has a long list of member centers from all across the world. ICIJ also has a long list of members on its website. So if you're looking at a country you're not so familiar with, reach out to these journalists. I'm sure they'll be willing to help.
اوكي سريعا لارا صراحة مش رح أقدر أفتح الباب.
And quickly, and we want to open the floor for questions. Do you think that open database could be a starting point to prove some theory and conduct checking, fact checking? So can you tell us quickly about the main tools used for
Okay, I'm no expert in flight track. Oh, we're done? Oh, no, we're carry on. I'm not an expert in flight tracking or vessel tracking, but I know of some. There's Icarus for flights, flight radar. For vessels, there's marine traffic, Aquasis, that kind of thing. You can look at these. They're all free online. Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Sorry.
شكرا لارا. أسفين إنه ما قدرنا ناخذ أسئلة.
Sorry for not being able to take questions.